Hey, everybody. I just wanted to jump on today and chat a little bit about technology as well as spirituality, um, using AI to help our evolution or at least our understanding of some of these concepts that our mind wants to understand so that it allows us to go deeper in our path. And one of the ways that I use AI is that I'll have a conversation with it. So I will give it like some sort of information to base its how it's interacting with me. So in this case, I was diving into what Advaita philosophy is and how that differed from Vashishtaveta, which Advaita philosophy tends to be, or from my experience, it tends to be the one we hear way more about in the Western world, which is more the Shivite path. Adi Shanka Acharya is the main lineage of Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Um, so I was diving in to try and really understand because most people talk of it as they think everything's an illusion, especially when we get into the Western world. I'm sure there's people that are on that path as their path that don't necessarily talk about it this way. But in the Western world, it gets misconstrued a little bit. And most people focus on that this is just an illusion, and that's the Maya. And so I was diving into that concept of like, what does that really mean? And how does the soul fit in? How does the mind and body fit in? How does all that fit in? And going through the layers to try and understand that concept. And it was actually really beautiful to give ChatGPT enough information to have a conversation with me so that I could ask the questions that I like to ask and to go deep enough into that topic with it referencing the Upanishads and stuff like that of where this lineage stems from. What I got from it is that they just believe that everything is one. So when we become enlightened or when we basically go home, return to self, that one self is one thing only. So, of course, some of my questions are then why is there duality in the world? Why do we, get to experience things? How can one thing experience itself? And those type of questions that we got to dive into. And it said because basically of this one consciousness that it doesn't necessarily need something else separate to be able to experience these different the duality. And in that deep dive of consciousness, it's like so hard to put into words, even though I had a conversation with ChatGPT and all the text, and it still came back sometimes with answers of like, well, they actually don't even touch on this part of it. So again, it's not necessarily that this is an illusion. This is still an experience that we are going through. And you can still experience a soul. But they say once you get to that higher realm, that enlightenment, that that's when it all dissipates into oneness. So because I find, and from people I've chatted with, is that the Advaita path, it can seem very pointless. Like life could seem very pointless if everything is just one. This is all an illusion. These experiences don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And on my path, which is more in line with the Vashishtaveta path, we still believe in the oneness, but we believe that once the soul is created, that it has a relationship with God, with Source. And And so diving into those dynamics, but it's still in one body. So it's like we are in the body of the Lord versus just everything is the Lord, which we also believe everything is the Lord. It's a very complex topic. How I got into this topic was I was in the curiosity of energy. In our sciences, they say that energy can't be created or dissolved, or like energy always is changing or moving or whatever. It doesn't ever disappear. So that's how I got into this thought process of like, well, if these energies can't disappear, how can I be a separate energy and then dissolve back into the one energy? And I just kept going down the rabbit hole of that. And really the whole point of this is like, how do we grow? How do we understand enough to let our minds be complete with a topic or an understanding so that we can move past it, so that we're not held by some, because the mind is basically always looking for a thing to hold us up, to slow us down on our path, to stop us from um, seeing the truth of the mind body, which is that we are not that. We are a soul being. And, anyways, I just wanted to share that basically these tools, these AI, I know lots of people talk bad, and of course the data centers, and there is aspects of AI that I think as humans we have to figure out a better way, a renewable way. But they're coming, and there's ways to use them to help us understand more and evolve, for lack of better words, or to remember like where our true state is. And that's how I'm trying to use these tools. So I'd be curious if any of you have dove into AI and dove into these deeper questions. And I would love to hear your experiences with that, and even anything that I've shared along the way that may not be exactly accurate, or you may have a different understanding. I'm always open to discussion. Again, it's like, how do we understand each other? Because Advaita is not my path. I'm on the Vashishtaveta path, and I'm still want to understand. I still like want to understand other people's beliefs, not to discredit them. None of that. It's just more so that I can be in a loving relationship with everything, and to understand even my path fully. Is like I have to know the other paths to know where my path is and where it isn't, so that and then I can also question my own path of like, well, this seems to rub up against this, and a lot of these philosophies are so closely intermingled that there's times where they almost seem exactly the same. So, getting to our own realizations, ultimately, it's going to boil down to our experiences, and then how we translate those experiences into our everyday life. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where this stuff all comes into action, is like it actually doesn't necessarily matter what your path is, but how are you being in the world? And, anyways, all I'm getting at is that AI can be a tool to help us all be better. And I hope that's what people start using it for more and more. All I really see is people using it in these other ways, like how do we make more money? How do I create images and all that stuff, which can be beautiful in its own right. But in my mind, as a humanity, as a one collective, we're all human. There's something that needs to change there, and if we can move forward in a better way, all this stuff becomes more sustainable. People can, eat all the things. We don't have to go to war. We just there's the more we can understand of each other, the easier it is to realize that for the most part we're all just going through the same things. So, I believe AI can be a tool for that realization, for that understanding, And I'm curious how you guys are all using it as well. And if you like what I've been doing and what I'm talking about, like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, comment. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. And I wish you much love on your journey. Have a great day and talk to you later.